the Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the Bliss Business Podcast series, Marketing with Purpose, our 10 to 15 minute series where we explore how embedding purpose into every level of your marketing transforms not just your messaging, but your momentum. I'm Steven Sakach, joined by Tullio, Siragusa, and Maher. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hey, good to have you back, Ash. You haven't been on for a while. It's good to see you again.
Glad to be back.
So today's topic is positioning with purpose, how brands can carve out their white space, not by selling features, but by taking a stand for a belief. So in marketing and brand strategy, white space kind of refers to this unoccupied or under-addressed area in the market where you can brand you and position yourself uniquely. So not by competing on features, but by owning a belief or a perspective or emotional territory that others haven't claimed. So Ash, let's talk about the traditional feature-focused approach.
Of course. Well, Steve, in traditional marketing, we were taught to differentiate by what we do. Our tool is faster. Our widget is cheaper. Our platform has more integrations. But let's be honest, those kinds of advantages are temporary. Features are easy to copy, but beliefs aren't.
Exactly. So when you're positioning around a feature, you're really selling a commodity. When you're positioning around a belief, you're actually creating an emotional connection, something that's hard to replicate and something that deeply resonates. So in a white space, this is where you say things like, no one is talking about this. No one is standing up for that. Or no one is serving these people in a human way. So it's tied to a belief, not some feature.
So yeah, let's talk about why that's powerful. So it's harder to copy than a feature, right? So it builds emotional resonance with your customers, like you mentioned, Tullio. And it lets you attract like-minded talent, partners, and customers who rally around that belief. And as we've said, most customers don't remember all the details of your brand, but they do remember how it made them feel and whether it stood for something they care about. And there was a study by Harvard Business Review that showed 64% of consumers say shared values are the primary reason they have a relationship with a brand. Ash, what does it mean to own a belief?
Well, Steve, owning a belief means planting a flag in the ground saying, this is what we're here to change. This is what we believe should be different in the world. You're not just selling a solution. You're selling a total shift.
Exactly. Now let's take an example. Instead of saying a message like, we build electric bikes, you could say, we build electric bikes because we believe freedom shouldn't come with a carbon cost. So that's a totally different message. One speaks to what, the other speaks to why. So it combines mobility with climate purpose. Another feature-based example, we sell meal kits, right? The purpose-driven approach, we believe cooking should connect you to what matters, your time, your people, your food. Its purpose woven into a lifestyle and values. These subtle but very distinct differences that ring differently and feel differently when you hear them.
Yeah, and that last example shows it doesn't have to be like a social cause. I think a lot of people are always thinking purpose, tied to that. It's just a why we believe this is important, right? So when you own a belief, you also filter who you're for and who you're not. And that's powerful. You're not trying to win everybody. You're building trust and loyalty with those who believe what you believe. So we're advocating for brands to own a belief or emotional territory that competitors haven't claimed. So that's going to help you stand apart in a crowded marketplace.
No, that's amazing. Well, on that note, we're shifting over to segment 3, brands that position with purpose. Okay, so let's talk
about some good examples here.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of brands that came to mind that are reshaping the healthcare experience. One is GoodRx, and the other is Cost Plus Drugs. They didn't just launch platforms to find cheaper meds. They launched a movement to restore dignity to healthcare. Their shared belief, access to life-saving medication shouldn't depend on your zip code or your insurance plan. GoodRx brought price transparency into the spotlight. Cost Plus Drugs, founded by Mark Cuban, cut out the middleman entirely to offer meds at a radically lower price. Neither brand leads with features. They lead with fairness. That purpose is what builds trust in one of the most distrusted industries out there.
Yeah, you know, and I think when people they mention Mark Cuban nowadays too, they're always bringing up Cost Plus Drugs with him. I've just noticed that the other day, which is I've got to think he's started and funded a lot of companies, but I got to think that he's feeling this is probably one of the things he's most proud of doing because of how many people it's actually helping. But yeah, what other examples do we have here?
Well, yeah, another one is Tony Chocolonely. Try that out 10 times fast. Tony Chocolonely. So they're not just
Chocolonely. Yeah.
Chocolonely. They're not just a chocolate company. Their position is based on a belief that 100% slave-free chocolate. So that belief drives everything: how they source, how they package, and how they market. Their purpose isn't the side dish; it's the main course.
Yeah. So, by the way, go to TonyChocolonely.com if you can, type that out in Google, you'll get there. And check out their promise section if you want to read up on like forced labor and child labor in cocoa farms. And it's all a good cause, but you can't help but dig into the problem when you're there and learn more. And then while you're doing that, though, notice how the brand invites customers into a movement. It's not just like a market, right? It's positioning with purpose, and that kind of unlocks customers and it turns them into participants, not just purchasers. And that's a big shift. But the only way I think, I can describe it, but if you go there, you just have to kind of read through some of what they're doing. And then suddenly you're like down this rabbit hole of, oh, wow, I didn't know this existed, or, this is a really great cause. And now I'm going to think, twice about maybe how I'm purchasing in this area. But it really does change the shift from customers to more of a movement.
Yeah, and we talked a few episodes back about the category CMO, someone who can carve a new category for many cases a B2B space. But in some cases, you're not always going to be able to fully create a different category, especially in something really crowded. So the chocolate, there's so many chocolatiers and chocolate companies and so on.
Yeah, how are you going to compete on features in that space, right?
That's the point of this. Yeah, or categorize yourself differently. It's like you make chocolate, but these white spaces are the opportunities to carve out a category, right? These guys, they're slave-free chocolate, right? So they saw an opportunity to highlight what's different about them. That's something that's impactful to human beings. And we all would resonate with that. Of course, we don't want to consume something that contributes to something so negative as slavery. So it elevates the brand. And now, so if you're wondering how to find your white space, this is what you want to ask yourself, right? One is, what outdated belief in your industry are you challenging? What's broken that you feel called to fix? What truth do you see that others don't see? And what do your most loyal customers already believe about you? These are very deep questions. And if in an individual level, emotional intelligence is born out of self-awareness, right? So we ask these things like, what do I stand for? What do I believe in? What do I care about? Yeah. But you're actually doing the same exercise as a business. You're achieving your own self-awareness as a business by asking these questions. And that's where you find your white space, in that awareness.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Tullio, from there, you got to test those beliefs. Test how those beliefs show up across your messaging. Can you tell your origin story through that lens? Can your ads reflect it? Can your team rally around that mission? Really test it out and say, okay, is this really working? Do people feel the vision, the purpose? As they're looking at our messaging, our ads, and so on and so forth, going onto our website and so on.
Yeah, and here's a secret: if their purpose maybe isn't a little uncomfortable to talk about, it's probably not bold enough, right? Yeah. So owning a belief takes courage. So here's the takeaway: don't position around features that fade. Position around a belief that lasts. Purpose is your compass and clarity is your amplifier. Thanks for listening to the Bliss Business Podcast today. We'll see you next time on our Marketing with Purpose series.